Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard here for a Sunday edition as we get started on, I guess, quote unquote, a new week. If you look at it that way, I like to look at my week starting on Monday, but obviously the tradition is Sunday as we get fired up for some maybe NFL football is more important today. I don't know. As the Edmonton Oilers continue to do exactly what they've done since mid-November, and that is win. So now begs the question, as you're starting to see across the kind of YouTube universe here, all the talk about trades, all the talk about what is exactly going to happen for the Edmonton Oilers at the NHL trade deadline. Today I thought I'd take a little bit more of an expanded look at kind of the absolute all-around circumstances the Oilers find themselves in when it comes to this year's NHL trade deadline. Obviously, in the first week of March, the Oilers will have done their decisions, and we'll all be talking about this for the rest of the playoffs. But if you are new to the channel, friends, consider hitting that subscribe button. Would love to have you aboard as a regular viewer on the channel. Obviously, not for everybody, but hey, if Oilers updates are for you, let's get you up, right? Okay, so this is a little bit of a thought exercise, not necessarily saying who's coming to Edmonton, who's getting traded, but there are several issues at hand here for the Edmonton Oilers, and I'll go through them here a little thoroughly for you. So, Kane and his LTIR, I think the most effective use of Evander Kane at this point would be to send him down to Bakersfield on a conditioning loan for the last two games of the season as you get prepared for the playoffs, and essentially wait until you're out of the salary cap time, right? And then activate them for the playoffs, kind of like something Vegas and Tampa Bay would do. And obviously, that is going to maximize your salary cap for the trade deadline. Now, Bouchard's ask, this one on here is kind of a tricky one because, again, there is a little bit of an issue there where if you pay Bouchard, you pay McDavid, you pay Draisaitl, you're way too high up there. So not saying that we're trading Bouchard, just saying that the Oilers will have to keep that in mind when they go to try and maximize things here at the deadline in case somebody has an extra year on their contract. Trying to fit all the pieces, as we did last year, might not be as pretty as one might hope. So you have to consider A, the offer sheet possibility, B, what you're signing Bouchard for, and C, the return on any other situation when it comes to trading pieces to either keep Bouchard or ultimately, if you do decide to trade him, is it more worth it to hope some team's going to offer sheet him for a ludicrous amount? You get your 4 first round picks or whatever comes with the amounts that have been mentioned for Bouchard and you call it good, right? I don't know. Because those first 4 round picks are through the next several years, not all 1 year. Flexibility is another big part that goes hand in hand with the Bouchard ask, is simply for the Oilers. Flexibility, whether it be this year with the roster going up and down, or whether it be with, of course, the playoff roster when it comes to kind of positions, or whether it be coming to next year, as I said, where you don't have to worry about the guy, or you can keep the guy and he can kind of play a shuffled role. That's the idea. And then the playoff team right there as well. What I'll tell you about that is you have to decide what you want the Edmonton Oilers playoff team to be. Because right now, this Oilers team is a puck possession heavy team that generates scoring chances within the zone, scores goals, but really isn't overly physical. And up until that game against Vancouver, really the physical response hasn't been there at all this season from the Oilers. So other than the first 5 or 6 games where they finally won because they were fighting. But right, is you got to look. Do you want to be a mean, tough team in the playoffs? Because the Oilers, quite honestly, at this trade deadline, that'll be their last chance to change that. Yes, you can say they're saving the body for the playoffs, but even still, the Oilers in the playoffs the last 3 years have not been the team that out hits the other team night in, night out. And when they do, I think they had a losing record in the playoffs last year if they out hit the other team. So keep that in mind as well for yourself this afternoon. And bigger questions as well for the Oilers. This is where, right, the trade deadline poses so many questions is next year's salary cap, right? What does that look like? And ultimately, if you're worried about the Bouchard extension, if you have an inside track that the salary cap's going up, I don't know, 8 million, 9 million, 10 million next year because everything we've reported on the salary cap this year looks really, really good, then are you as worried about maintaining a player on your roster from this year's trade deadline for next year? Big question. I don't know. Again, the higher the number goes, the better off you are, obviously, right? And then the McDavid contract. That is where if you end up doing something like a Matthias Ekholm, where you've got him for years after the fact, McDavid's contract is also going to factor in there, not just Evan Bouchard. So keep that in mind when we're looking at it. And then as well, another question for the Oilers is the roster space for the young guys. So you see right now, Noah Philp is getting a lot of play time down there on the fourth line. Obviously, they're trying to test him out, see if they really truly need to upgrade or not. And I think truly that is going to be the case for a lot of guys coming up from Bakersfield over the next year or two. But the Oilers have to be careful here, is if they go out and acquire anyone else, they will not be able to necessarily fold in guys like Matt Savoy, guys on the back end, guys that want to get some playing time here. Olivier Rodrigue, right? You go acquire John Gibson, Rodrigue will not see an NHL start this year. I can guarantee that. So that's where we're kind of at, is you have to keep that in mind as well. The bigger questions when it comes to building this roster for this year's playoffs and next, is the roster space for the young guys. And then I'll leave you on this. The good old conversation that we all love to have in Oilers country. Simply put, grit, skill, size, and speed, right? What do you prefer the Edmonton Oilers to be made of? And if you prefer the Oilers to be made of size and grit, that's fine. If you prefer them to be made of size and speed, that's fine. If you just deserve size and skill or speed and skill, I don't really care either which way. But for the Oilers, again, what it all comes down to is the way this roster is constructed, the pieces that you've got, like a Jeff Skinner, like an Evander Kane, like an Evan Bouchard. Again, also on that fourth line, you've got a guy like Kasperi Kapanen. You've got some dynamic pieces there that have changed the look of this Oilers roster for better or for worse. And right, some would say Bouchard's not physical enough. Some would say Jeff Skinner just needs to get traded because he's not contributing to $3 million. Kasperi Kapanen has come on as a waiver wire walk-on and been an absolute gem on that fourth line for the Oilers. So, you kind of keep rolling through and you kind of try to determine what exactly this Oilers team is going to be at the trade deadline. But I think the bigger part is you will see a clear direction from the Oilers, if it is at all stated before the trade deadline, that Evander Kane will remain on the LTIR, until the playoffs, right? He will not see game action until the playoffs get going. That, I would assume, is your clear direction that the Oilers will have a much bigger, much more thought out trade deadline than we possibly can. And my voice is now failing me. Friends, have a great day. Just a little conversation for you here as I am up on out here.